Welcome to another deep dive. This time we're heading into Navajo country, to the world of skinwalkers. We're going to be looking at some first-hand accounts and stories shared by Leah Hardy on the 3 a.m. Scary Stories podcast.
And what really struck me about her stories is how grounded they are in her life on the Navajo reservation. It's not just like, spooky campfire tales.
Yeah, from the very beginning you can tell how much stories are just a part of life there. Like she even talks about sharing scary stories with family and friends just for fun.
Which is really interesting when you think about the respect they have for tradition in the spirit world. It's like this balance between everyday life and something much bigger.
Right, and that's where the whole idea of the Skinwalker comes in. This figure that's surrounded by so much fear and taboo.
And Leah's perspective on that taboo is fascinating. She mentions how her grandmother, who was the daughter of a medicine man, believed that you actually gain power by acknowledging and confronting those beings.
Like turning fear into strength.
Exactly. It kind of challenges the idea that the more you fear something, the more power it has over you.
And her grandmother's encounter with the Skinwalker really shows that.
Oh, absolutely. Just picture this. A traditional hogan lit by a kerosene lamp. It's on a remote mountaintop. Her grandmother is alone with her kids when she senses something bad outside.
I can't even imagine.
Well, she hears hooves circling the hogan, so she grabs her father's rifle and waits.
Oh, wow.
And when the Skinwalker gets close, she throws open the door and fires.
That's intense.
It is. And then afterwards, she finds a hoof just left there in the sand. Real, tangible evidence.
That's so creepy.
It really underscores the point that Navajo culture isn't about ignoring fear. It's about facing it head on, not letting it control you.
And that strength seems to run in the family. Leah also had her own terrifying encounter with something outside her bedroom window.
She describes feeling totally paralyzed, like she couldn't even scream, but she knew she had to warn her mother.
So what did she do?
Well, she managed to run to her mother's room, and when they looked outside, they saw this figure just casually leaning against a light post, watching them.
That is so chilling.
Right. And the way it was just standing there so calmly, it's like it was almost haunting them.
So creepy.
But Leah's mom, she doesn't back down. She grabs her gun, and with Leah's brother, they chase the intruder off their property.
Wow. That's incredible.
It's a reminder that even though these stories are scary, they also show how we can choose how we react to fear.
Yeah. Leah's family chose to take action instead of just freezing up.
Exactly. And Leah's father actually had an unsettling experience too, but his was at a Navajo boarding school, those schools that were set up to assimilate Native American children.
Oh, right.
Leah tells the story about a boy who just vanished while walking down the hall to the bathroom.
Just disappeared.
Yep. And they found the bathroom empty.
That's so eerie.
It adds this whole other layer of mystery to our deep dive, don't you think?
Definitely. It's like, what happened to him?
Exactly. And these personal stories are a great starting point for us to understand skinwalkers in Navajo culture. Leah provides a lot of insight into how they're viewed and the taboos surrounding them.
Yeah, like the belief that skinwalkers can shape-shift and control the wind.
Right, and that they're powerful and malevolent. And this belief is so strong that there's even a taboo against whistling at night because it's thought to attract them.
Wow, I'd never heard that before. So you're saying people believe that just a simple whistle could bring a skinwalker?
That's the belief, yes. It's like the wind carries your whistle and alerts them. That connection between wind, sound, and skinwalkers is really fascinating, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's like the wind itself becomes a bridge between our world and theirs.
Exactly. It makes you wonder about those other sounds Leah mentioned, those like rustling in the trees or the feeling of being watched.
Yeah, it's like this unsettling feeling that something's always lurking nearby.
Right. It's like the boundaries get blurry. That line between the physical world and the spirit world gets thin, especially in those in-between spaces she talked about.
I see what you mean. It's interesting, though, how you have this push and pull with the skinwalkers. On one hand, you have Leah's grandmother, who confronts it head on. But then you have this taboo against whistling, like you're trying not to attract its attention.
Yeah, it's a weird balance, isn't it? Like acknowledging their power, but also being cautious and respectful.
That makes sense. And that brings us to another interesting aspect of Leah's interview, the Navajo way of dealing with fear and storytelling.
Right. She talks about how they mix humor into even the scariest stories.
It's like they're acknowledging the darkness but not letting it overwhelm them.
Exactly. It's a powerful way to process fear, and it also builds community. Sharing those stories, even the scary ones, brings people together.
It's like when you're sitting around a campfire swapping ghost stories. It's entertaining, but it also reminds you that you're not alone in being scared.
And those stories can also serve as warnings, right? Like cautionary tales to help people avoid danger.
That taboo against whistling is a perfect example. It's like a story passed down through generations to warn about attracting skinwalkers, a reminder to be respectful of the unseen world.
And that respect ties into what we're talking about here, the importance of listening to people who experience these things, especially in cultures where those experiences are so connected to their traditions and beliefs.
So even though Leah's stories are rooted in Navajo culture, they have a universal message, don't they? About confronting fear, respecting the unknown, and realizing that reality might be more complicated than we think.
Absolutely. It encourages us to be humble, curious, and open-minded when we approach these topics, to try and understand instead of just dismissing them.
Because who knows? Maybe in that exploration we'll discover something new about ourselves and the world around us. It makes you think about all the stories we tell ourselves too. Not just about skinwalkers or anything, but just the stories we live with every day. Do those stories help us, or do they actually hold us back from understanding things?
That's such a good point. Leah's experiences really make you question those stories and the assumptions we have about what's real and what's not. Like, what if we're missing out on something by shutting down certain possibilities without even considering them?
It's like we've been taught to ignore anything that doesn't fit into our understanding of how things work. But what if our understanding is wrong? Or at least incomplete?
That's what's so interesting about Leah's interview. It suggests that there's this whole other level of experience that we just don't see, or that we can't explain with science. And that's where things like skinwalkers exist.
Which brings up another fascinating point, the relationship between science and spirituality. For so long, we've treated them as separate things, even opposites. But could they actually work together?
More and more people are starting to think so. Like, what if science helps us understand the physical world, while spirituality gives us insight into consciousness and meaning?
So it's not about choosing one over the other, it's about finding a way to bring them together.
Exactly. And as we learn more about consciousness, quantum physics, and all these big questions, that line between science and spirituality might start to disappear.
Maybe that's the key to figuring out some of those mysteries that have been around for centuries, like paranormal stuff, consciousness, and even the nature of reality itself.
It's possible, and even though Leah's stories are about the Navajo, there are similar stories and beliefs in cultures all over the world. Like the ancient Greeks had their wind gods, and the Japanese have stories about Tengu, these powerful spirits in the mountains who are connected to the wind.
So maybe there's some universal truth that we're all tapping into, even if we express it differently.
Maybe. It's like we're all picking up on the same frequency, but we interpret it in our own way. And as we learn more about that frequency, and as we get better at exploring the connections between science and spirituality, maybe we'll be able to understand it all more clearly.
This deep dive into Leah's world and the world of skinwalkers has been really eye-opening and honestly a little creepy. We've heard some chilling stories about the supernatural, learned about Navajo traditions, and even explored the space where science and spirituality meet.
And Leah's message about facing your fears, respecting the unknown, and listening to those whispers on the wind, that's something we can all take with us. It reminds us to be open to new ideas and question what we think we know, and never stop exploring the mysteries around us.
So as you go about your day, think about the stories you tell yourself and the stories you hear from others. Be open to different perspectives, question your assumptions, and never stop exploring, because the world is full of amazing and strange things. And those mysteries, those whispers on the wind, they hold truths that are just waiting to be discovered.